The butler tried to stop me at the gate. I had expected that. What I had not expected was the house itself. Ashworth Park, rising from the Kent countryside like something carved from the bones of the earth. 3 stories of pale stone, 40 windows catching the late September sun, and a silence so vast it seemed to press against my chest. I had imagined this place for 7 years. I had imagined it small. "I am here to see the Duke of Ashworth," I said, and my voice did not shake, which was its own small victory. "I have something that belongs to him." The butler, a tall, silver-haired man with the expression of someone who had seen every variety of human desperation and found them all equally tiresome, looked at my travelling dress, my single valise, the mud on the hem of my cloak. He looked at my bare left hand. "His Grace is not receiving visitors. He will receive me." I opened my palm. The ring sat there like a dropped star. Gold, heavy, set with a sapphire so dark it was nearly black. The Ashworth crest was engraved on the inner band, a falcon with spread wings. I had memorised every scratch, every worn edge. I had held it on nights when the cold got into the walls of whatever room I was renting, and I had told myself, "This is not yours. You are only keeping it safe. One day you will give it back, and you will be free." The butler's face changed. Not dramatically, not the way faces change in stories. But something behind his eyes shifted, as if a door had opened onto a room he had forgotten existed. "Wait here," he said. He did not say please, but he did not close the door, and that felt like the same thing. I should tell you how I came to be standing on the steps of a duke's estate, with a ring I had no right to carry, and a speech I had rehearsed so many times it had worn grooves in my memory, like water over stone. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. My father was Mr. Philip Whitmore of Warwickshire, a gentleman in name, a gambler by compulsion, and a man who understood the value of everything except the people who depended on him. He died when I was 15, in a coaching inn outside Bath, with debts so staggering that when the solicitor read them aloud, my mother laughed. Not because it was funny, because the alternative was screaming. The ring arrived 3 days after the funeral. A solicitor, not ours, a London man with clean fingernails and an accent that made every word sound like a contract, brought it to our door in a velvet box. He said my father had entered into an arrangement with the late Duke of Ashworth. He said the ring was a token of understanding. He said, with the careful blankness of a man delivering news he did not wish to explain, that I had been promised. "Promised," my mother repeated. "Promised to whom?" "To the Duke's son, upon her 20th birthday, or upon the current Duke's passing, whichever comes first." My mother sent him away. She burned the letter that accompanied the ring. But she did not burn the ring itself, because we were 3 weeks from losing the house, and a gold ring set with a sapphire was not sentiment. It was survival. Except she could not sell it. She tried. 2 jewellers in Warwick refused to touch it once they saw the crest. One of them went pale. "That is an Ashworth betrothal ring," he said. "There are perhaps 4 in existence. If you sell it, madam, you will answer for it." So we kept it. And when my mother died 2 years later, quietly, in her sleep, as if she had simply decided she was finished, I inherited the ring along with everything else, which was nothing. I was 17. I had a dead father's debts, a dead mother's silence, and a ring that belonged to a man I had never met, tying me to a promise I had never made. For 7 years I carried it. I carried it through 3 positions as a governess, each one ending when someone discovered I was the daughter of Philip Whitmore, debtor, disgrace. I carried it through a winter in a boarding house in Cheapside, where I shared a room with 2 other women and ate bread and dripping for supper. I carried it through the slow, grinding discovery that a woman alone in England is not a person. She is a problem to be solved, a vacancy to be filled, a body to be placed somewhere useful. And through all of it, the ring sat in the lining of my cloak like a coal that would not cool. A reminder, a chain, a question I could not stop asking. Who is he? Does he know about me? Does he know what his father did? I had come to Ashworth Park to find out, and to give the ring back, and to be free. That was the plan. The plan did not survive the first 30 seconds. The door opened, and he was there. Not a servant, not a secretary. The Duke of Ashworth himself, standing in the entrance hall of his own house as if he had been pacing and the door had simply gotten in his way. He was younger than I had expected. That was the first thing. I had imagined someone older, heavier, shaped by title and expectation into something marbled and remote. But the man in front of me was perhaps 30, tall, with dark hair that was not quite in order and a jaw that looked like it had been set against something and never relaxed. His eyes were grey, not the soft grey of morning fog, the grey of flint, the grey of something that could spark. He looked at me the way one looks at a letter written in a language one almost recognises. "You have something of mine," he said. Not a question. "I have something of your father's." I held the ring out between us. My hand was steady. "I am returning it." He did not take it. He looked at the ring, then at me, and something crossed his face. Confusion, yes, but also something sharper. Something that looked almost like recognition, though I knew that was impossible. "I have never seen that ring before in my life," he said. The ground shifted under me, not literally, but the speech I had prepared, the dignified, composed, carefully worded explanation I had practiced in every rented room for 7 years, dissolved like sugar in rain. "That is not possible," I said. "It bears your family's crest." "I can see what it bears." His voice was low, controlled, but there was an edge to it, like a blade kept very carefully in its sheath. "What I am telling you is that I did not give it, I did not authorise it, and I have no knowledge of any arrangement involving—" His eyes swept over me again, and I felt it like a hand passing too close to a flame. "You." The word landed strangely, not with contempt, with something almost like bewilderment, as if my existence was a problem he had not anticipated and did not yet know how to solve. "Then your father acted without your knowledge," I said. "That is between you and his memory. I am here only to return what is not mine." I held the ring out further. My arm was beginning to ache. He still did not take it. "Come inside," he said. And then, as if remembering himself, "Please." The study at Ashworth Park smelled of leather and old paper and something faintly botanical. Dried lavender, perhaps, or rosemary, hung somewhere I could not see. The walls were lined with books. A fire burned low in the grate, despite the mildness of the day, as if someone in this house was always cold. The Duke, I did not know his Christian name then, and would not learn it for some time, stood behind his desk as if it were a barricade. He had not offered me a chair. I had not asked for one. "Tell me everything," he said, "from the beginning." So I told him. The solicitor, the ring, my father's debts. The word "promised" dropped into our parlour like a stone into still water. My mother's refusal to explain further, the jeweller's fear. 7 years of carrying a dead man's bargain in the lining of my cloak. He listened without interrupting. His face gave nothing away. But his hands, I noticed his hands, They were gripping the edge of the desk so hard his knuckles had gone white. When I finished, the silence lasted long enough to hear the fire crack. "My father," he said very quietly, "died 4 years ago." "I know. And in those 4 years, you did not come." "I was not ready." That was true, but it was not the whole truth. The whole truth was that I had been afraid. Afraid that I would arrive and discover I was expected, that the arrangement was real, binding, and that I had walked from one cage into another. What changed? I met his gaze. I ran out of reasons not to. Something flickered in those grey eyes. Not warmth, not yet, but attention. A door, not opening, but unlocking. "Miss Whitmore," he said, and my name in his mouth sounded like something he was testing the weight of. "I need to investigate this. My father's papers are extensive, and I have not read them all. If what you say is true, it is true. Then there are implications I am not prepared to discuss in this moment." He straightened, drew himself up to his full height, which was considerable. "You will stay." It was not a request. "I will not," I said. His eyebrows rose. It occurred to me that the Duke of Ashworth was not accustomed to hearing that word. "You have travelled some distance," he said, with the careful patience of a man explaining something obvious. "The nearest inn is 7 miles. You have no carriage. The hour is late. I have managed worse. I do not doubt it." And there, just there, at the corner of his mouth, something that was not quite a smile. "But I am asking you to stay, so that we may resolve this properly, with evidence." I should have refused. Every instinct told me to leave the ring on his desk, walk out the door, and never look back. I had come to sever the last tie to my father's ruin, not to sleep in the house of a stranger. But he had said asking, and his knuckles were still white on the desk. And there was something in his voice, beneath the authority, beneath the title, that sounded almost like a man who had just discovered a crack in the foundation of his own house and was trying very hard not to look down. "One night," I said. "I will stay 1 night." He nodded. Then he rang for the housekeeper. And that is how I came to sleep in the east wing of Ashworth Park, in a room with blue silk wallpaper and a view of the lake, with the ring still in my pocket because he had not taken it, and the distinct, terrible feeling that I had walked into something I would not walk out of easily. I did not see him at dinner. A tray was sent to my room, cold pheasant, bread, a pear so ripe it bruised under my thumb. A note accompanied it, written in a hand so controlled it looked almost mechanical. "My father's study is locked. I have sent for the key. I expect to have answers by morning. Please be comfortable. A." The initial, just the letter, as if his full name was something he did not distribute casually. I ate. I paced. I stood at the window and watched the moon rise over the lake, and I thought about the sound of his voice when he said "you." That strange, startled weight, as if I were not a person but a question he had not known to ask. I did not sleep well. By morning, the Duke had found what he was looking for. I knew this before he told me, because when I came down the main staircase, early, before the household had fully stirred, I found him in the entrance hall, standing exactly where he had stood the day before, as if he had not moved. He was holding a sheaf of papers. His face was grey. Not flint grey, not spark grey. The grey of ashes. "It is real," he said. I gripped the banister. "My father signed a contract with yours in 1811. His voice was flat, drained of everything except precision. "In exchange for the settlement of Mr. Whitmore's debts, Substantial debts, Miss Whitmore, debts that would have destroyed your family entirely. My father agreed to a future union between his eldest son and Mr. Whitmore's only daughter. He looked at me. You. I know what I am. The contract is specific. It names you, it names me. It includes a clause that makes the arrangement binding upon the death of either father, transferring the obligation to the surviving parties. He paused. It is, in the opinion of the solicitor I woke at dawn, legally enforceable. The hall tilted. I put my hand against the wall. I did not come here to marry you, I said. And I did not wake this morning expecting to discover I had been betrothed for 15 years. His jaw was set so tight I could see the muscle jumping beneath the skin. And yet here we are. Tear it up. I cannot. Then I will. You will not. He took a step toward me. Not threatening, but the hall was large, and the distance between us felt like it had been halved by a single movement. Because the contract also contains a penalty clause. If the arrangement is broken by the Whitmore party, the original debts are reinstated, with interest, against your father's estate. My father's estate is nothing. There is nothing to claim. There is you. The word hung between us. In 1811, he continued, and his voice had gone very quiet. Debtors' obligations could extend to dependents. The clause is archaic. It may not hold in a modern court, but it would take years to challenge, and during that time, Miss Whitmore, your name would be dragged through every courtroom and scandal sheet in England. I could not breathe. The walls of the entrance hall, all that pale stone, all that carefully maintained grandeur, pressed inward. So I am trapped, I said. He flinched. It was small. If I had not been watching his face with the desperate attention of a woman watching the ground for cracks, I would have missed it. But he flinched, and for one instant the mask dropped, and I saw something I had not expected. Shame. Not trapped, he said. Not if I can help it. I need time to find a way to dissolve this without consequence to either of us. But I need you here while I do it. If you leave with the ring and the story, and someone else finds out before I have a solution, you are asking me to stay. I am asking you to stay. There it was again. That word, asking. Carrying weight it should not have been able to bear. How long? I whispered. A fortnight, perhaps 3 weeks. 3 weeks in the house of a man I did not know, bound by a contract I had not signed, wearing a ring I had come to return. I have conditions, I said. His eyebrows rose again. That same flicker of something almost like surprise, almost like respect. Name them. I am not your guest. I am not your ward. I am not your betrothed. I am a woman resolving a legal matter, and I will be treated as such. I will have access to the documents. I will be consulted on every decision, and you will not... My voice caught. I steadied it. You will not make assumptions about what I owe you. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he inclined his head, a gesture so formal, so precisely calibrated, that it felt like a door being held open. Agreed, he said, on all points. He turned and walked toward his study. At the threshold, he paused. Breakfast is at 8, he said, without turning around. Mrs. Harding makes exceptional scones. It would be a waste to eat in your room. He closed the door behind him. I stood in the entrance hall with my hands still on the wall, and my heart beating so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The first 3 days established a pattern I had not anticipated. Proximity without intimacy, conversation without ease, and a growing awareness of the Duke of Ashworth that I could not seem to govern. We took breakfast together in the morning room. He was punctual to the minute. He drank his coffee black. He read correspondence while I ate, which should have felt rude, but instead felt like the behaviour of a man who did not know how to share a table without a task to anchor him. On the second morning, he set his letters aside. "You were a governess," he said. Not a question. He had been investigating. 3 times. What happened? My father's name happened. Employers do not want the daughter of Philip Whitmore shaping their children's characters. His mouth thinned. That is unjust. That is England, Your Grace. He held my gaze for a beat longer than was comfortable. Then he returned to his letters. On the third morning, he asked me what I was reading. I had found the library. Of course I had found the library. It was the finest room in the house, 2 stories of books with a gallery and a set of windows that turned the afternoon light to gold. And I had taken a volume of Cooper's poems without asking. "I should have requested permission," I said. "You should not have." He was standing in the doorway of the breakfast room, and the morning light behind him turned his dark hair almost warm. "The library is at your disposal, all of it." "That is generous." "It is practical. A woman with nothing to read becomes restless, and a restless woman in my house will begin asking questions I am not yet ready to answer." I almost smiled. Almost. "Is that a confession that you are hiding something, Your Grace?" "It is an acknowledgement that my father hid a great many things, and I am still finding them." He paused. "You may call me Ashworth. Your Grace 20 times at breakfast is wearing on us both." It was not his name. It was his title, stripped of its honorific, but it was a step closer than we had been, and we both knew it. "Ashworth," I said, pesting it. He turned away, but not before I saw the muscle in his jaw tighten. Not with anger, with something else. Something he mastered before I could name it. On the 5th day, I met his cousin. Mr. Lionel Graves arrived without warning, in a curricle driven too fast, with a smile that showed too many teeth and an ease of manner that set every nerve in my body on edge. He was handsome, in the way a well-made trap is handsome, all clean lines and polished surfaces, designed to draw you closer before you understood the mechanism. "So this is the mysterious Miss Whitmore." He bowed over my hand in the drawing room, while Ashworth stood by the window with his arms crossed and his expression carefully blank. "The entire county is buzzing. A woman at Ashworth Park, unchaperoned. You must be extraordinary." "I must be resolving a legal matter," I said, "which is considerably less interesting." Graves laughed. It was the laugh of a man who found everything amusing because nothing mattered to him. "Legal matters, is that what we're calling it?" He glanced at Ashworth. "Your father's ghost is busy, cousin. First the debts in the north, now a hidden betrothal. What next? A secret wife in the attic." "That is enough, Lionel." Ashworth's voice could have frozen the Thames. "I'm only making conversation." But Graves's eyes were sharp beneath the carelessness. He looked at me again, and this time the assessment was open, unguarded. He was calculating my value. Not in pounds, in leverage. After he left, an hour later, an hour too long, Ashworth found me in the library. "He is dangerous," I said, before he could speak. "He is my heir." Ashworth's voice was tight. "Until I marry and produce a son, Lionel Graves inherits everything. The title, the estates, the income. He has been waiting for it since he was 19. And now a woman has appeared with a betrothal contract. Yes. He will try to destroy it. Or me." Ashworth looked at me. The grey eyes were not flat anymore. They were burning. Low, controlled, but burning. "He will not touch you," he said. "I give you my word." "Your word is not a wall, Ashworth." "No," he said. "It is better. A wall can be climbed." He left the library. I stood among the books with my pulse hammering and the distinct awareness that something between us had shifted. Not toward warmth, not toward anything so simple, but toward an alliance that felt more dangerous than the threat it was meant to counter. On the 8th day, I found the letters. Not the contract, not the legal documents Ashworth and I had been poring over each evening in his study, side by side at his desk, close enough that I could smell the soap on his skin. Cedar and something clean. Something that made me lose my place in the text and hate myself for it. These were different. A bundle of letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon, tucked behind a false panel in the back of the late Duke's private desk. I found them because I was thorough, and because I had learned from my father that men who make secret deals keep secret records. They were written by the late Duke of Ashworth to my father, and they were not business correspondence. "Philip, I have watched your daughter at the Hartfield Assembly. She has her mother's bearing, and, I suspect, her mother's stubbornness. She will do well for my son, who has too much iron in him and not enough warmth. The arrangement stands. Tell no one." And later, "The boy suspects nothing. He is at Cambridge, buried in his books and his principles. He will resist at first. He resists everything I design for him, but he will see reason. They always do." And the last, dated 2 months before the late Duke's death. "I have not told him, Philip. I intended to, but he looks at me now with such distance that I think if I add one more lie to the architecture of our relations, the whole structure will collapse. I will tell him after the season, when things are calmer, when he is ready." He had never told him. The late Duke of Ashworth had died with the secret intact, and his son had inherited a title, an estate, a mountain of obligations, and a hidden betrothal he knew nothing about, to a woman he had never met, arranged by a father who could not find the right moment to confess. I sat on the floor of the study with the letters in my lap, and I wept, not for myself, for the boy at Cambridge who had not known, for the man downstairs who still did not fully understand, for the terrible, banal machinery of fathers who believed they could arrange the world for their children and never grasped that the world was not theirs to arrange. That is where Ashworth found me. He opened the door without knocking. He never knocked on his own study door, a habit I had noted, and stopped. I was on the floor, my eyes were red, the letters were spread around me like fallen leaves. "What is this?" he said, very quiet, very controlled. I held out the last letter, the one about the boy at Cambridge, the one that said, "He looks at me now with such distance." He read it standing. His face did not change, but his breathing did. I watched his chest, the way it went still, the way the air seemed to lock inside him as if his body had forgotten what to do with it. When he finished, he folded the letter with terrible precision and set it on the desk. "He could not tell me," he said. His voice was steady. His hands were shaking. "He could not find the moment. I am sorry. Do not be sorry for me." The words came fast, sharp, a flash of heat through the ice. "I am not the one who spent 7 years carrying a dead man's ring, while the living man who owed you answers sat in this house and said nothing." I stared at him. "You are angry," I said, "at your father." "I am angry at everything." He turned away, pressed his hands flat against the mantelpiece. His shoulders were rigid, the line of his back a study in suppressed force. "I am angry that he did this. I am angry that he died before I could confront him. I am angry that you came to my door and I could not even recognize what you were holding, because he kept it from me so completely that the first I learned of my own betrothal was from a woman with mud on her hem and more courage than anyone I have ever met. The room went very still. He had not meant to say that last part. I could tell by the way his shoulders tightened further, by the way his head dropped, by the half-breath he took as if to recall the words. But they were out, and they lay between us, like the letters on the floor, exposed, undeniable, impossible to fold back into their hiding place. "Ashworth," I said. "Do not." His voice was barely a whisper. "Do not say my name in that voice. I am trying to do the right thing, Miss Whitmore. I am trying to find a way to free you from a contract you did not choose, and I cannot do that if you—" He stopped. "If I what?" I whispered. He turned. The grey eyes were not flint now. They were not ash. They were open, wide and unguarded and terrified. And what I saw in them was so raw, so unprotected, that it felt like watching someone step to the edge of a cliff. "If you make me want to keep you," he said. I could not move. The air between us was solid, electric, impossible. He was 6 feet away. He might as well have been touching me. Then a door slammed somewhere deep in the house, and we both flinched, and the moment shattered. He straightened, rebuilt himself in the space of a single breath, shoulders back, jaw set, every wall restored. "Forgive me," he said. "That was inappropriate." It was honest. Those are not mutually exclusive. He picked up the letters, one by one, handling them as if they were evidence, which, I supposed, they were. "I will need these for the solicitor. We are running out of time. Graves has written to a London attorney." The name hit like cold water. "How do you know?" "Because my butler is more loyal than my cousin's valet is discreet." He met my eyes. "Graves is preparing a challenge. If he can prove the contract is fraudulent, it dissolves. But so does any obligation I have toward you. You would be turned out with nothing." "I came here with nothing." "You came here with a ring." His gaze dropped to my hand, to the finger where I had, without quite deciding to, begun wearing the sapphire. "And you are not leaving without a resolution. I promised you that." "You promised me a fortnight." "I am asking for more time." 3 times now. 3 times he had used that word, asking, as if he understood that in a world where men of his rank simply took, the act of requesting was itself a form of respect. "How much more?" I said. "As much as you will give me." He was not talking about time. We both knew he was not talking about time. But neither of us said so, because saying so would make it real, and real things in this house had a way of becoming binding. "I will stay," I said. He nodded, gathered the letters, walked to the door. "Ashworth." He stopped. "Your name," I said. "The initial on the note you sent my first night. What does it stand for?" A pause. The fire cracked. "Alexander," he said. And then he was gone. I stood in the study and pressed my hand against the place on my chest where my heart was beating too fast. And I thought, "Alexander." And I thought, "You are in terrible danger, Eleanor Whitmore." And I thought, "You are not going to leave." Graves struck on the 12th day. He did not come himself. He sent a woman, Lady Portmore, a society matron with a tongue like a surgical instrument and connections in every drawing room from London to Bath. She arrived for tea. She had not been invited. "Miss Whitmore." She settled into the drawing room chair as if she owned it. Her smile was exquisite and completely without warmth. "How fascinating that you have found yourself at Ashworth Park. The county is absolutely alive with speculation. I am sorry to have provided entertainment. Oh, do not apologise. Entertainment is so scarce in the country. She sipped her tea. But I must confess, I am here as a friend. To the Duke, naturally. We have known the family for years, and I would hate to see him embarrassed by a situation that could so easily be misunderstood. What situation would that be? An unmarried woman of no family and no fortune, living unchaperoned in the home of one of England's most eligible men. She set down her cup. Surely you understand how that appears, Miss Whitmore. Even if nothing improper has occurred, and I am certain nothing has, the appearance alone is enough to damage his reputation, and yours, though I suspect yours is rather less of a concern. The cruelty was polished to a shine. She delivered it the way a jeweller presents a stone, tilted to catch the light, displayed for maximum effect. I appreciate your concern, I said. My voice was steady. My hands, hidden in the folds of my dress, were not. But the circumstances of my presence here are a legal matter between the Duke and myself. If the county requires an explanation, the Duke is welcome to provide one. The Duke, she said, is a proud man. He will not explain. He will simply weather the storm, as his family always does. But storms leave damage, Miss Whitmore. And the damage is always worst for those who have no shelter to return to. She left an hour later, having planted her poison with the precision of a gardener. By evening, I could not eat. Ashworth found me in the library. He always found me in the library. Lady Portmore came at Graves' request, he said, not a question. She came to warn me that my presence is destroying your reputation. My reputation is granite. It will survive a houseguest. I am not a houseguest. I am a scandal. I closed the book I had not been reading. She is right, Ashworth. Every day I stay, the whispers grow louder. And when Graves makes his move, let him. You cannot mean that. I mean it entirely. He was standing between the bookcases, half in shadow, and the candlelight caught the angles of his face in a way that made him look carved from the same stone as the house. Graves wants me afraid. He wants you gone. If you leave, he wins, and I do not lose to Lionel Graves. This is not a game. No, it is not. He stepped forward, out of the shadow, into the light, and his face was not granite at all. It was open and fierce, and something I had never seen on a man of his rank. Certain. It is your life, Miss Whitmore, and you have spent 7 years carrying a burden that was never yours, paying for a debt you did not incur, and being punished for the crime of being Philip Whitmore's daughter. I will not add to that. Not by sending you away. Not by yielding to a man who cares nothing for you and less for justice. Why? The word came out raw. Why do you care? You did not know I existed a fortnight ago. He was close now. Close enough that I could see the pulse beating at the base of his throat, the slight unevenness of his breathing, the way his hands hung at his sides as if he were forcing them to stay there. Because you walked up to my door, he said, and gave me back a ring I did not know I had lost. And since that moment, I have not been able to think about anything else. The library was very quiet. The candles flickered. Outside, the wind moved through the oak trees with a sound like the world exhaling. Do not leave, he said. Eleanor. My name. My Christian name, spoken for the first time, and it landed exactly the way the master prompt said it should. Like a thunderclap. Like a door blown open in a storm. Alexander, I whispered. He reached out. His hand found mine, not grasping, not pulling, just there. His fingers closed around mine and held. The heat of his palm against my skin was a language I had never learned, and I understood every word. We stood like that for 10 seconds or 10 years. The candles burned, the books watched. Neither of us moved closer. Neither of us pulled away. Then a log collapsed in the fire with a crack like a gunshot, and I stepped back, and the moment, that exquisite, impossible, unbearable moment, folded itself into the silence between us and waited. "Good night," I said. "Good night," he said. I went to my room. I closed the door. I pressed my forehead against the cool wood and breathed. The ring was on my finger. I had not taken it off in days, and for the first time in 7 years, it did not feel like a chain. It felt like an anchor. Graves made his move 3 days later. He appeared at Ashworth Park with a London solicitor, a sheaf of documents, and a claim that the betrothal contract was void on grounds of fraud. That my father had misrepresented his circumstances, that the late Duke had not been of sound mind, and that I was, in his precise and poisonous phrasing, an adventuress, exploiting a dead man's error. He made this claim in the drawing room, in front of the housekeeper, 2 footmen, and, because he had timed it perfectly, the vicar of Ashworth, who had arrived for his weekly visit. "The county must know what is happening in this house," Graves said, with the righteous satisfaction of a man who believed he was winning. "A woman of no connections, no fortune, no reputation, has installed herself in the home of my cousin and is pursuing a claim against the estate that is, at best, delusional, and at worst, criminal." Ashworth stood by the fireplace. He had not spoken since Graves began. I watched his face. I watched the muscle in his jaw. I watched the stillness, that terrible, coiled, volcanic stillness, and I understood something that Graves, in his arrogance, had failed to see. Alexander Ashworth was not silent because he was defeated. He was silent because he was choosing his moment. "Are you finished?" Ashworth said. Graves blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "I asked if you were finished, because I have something to say, and I prefer to say it once." He reached into his coat and produced a document. Not the contract, not the letters, but something else. Something I had not seen. "This," he said, "is a letter from my father's personal solicitor, Mr. Hadley, written 3 weeks before my father's death. I found it last night in a strongbox I had never opened, because my father, in his infinite wisdom, left the key in a place only I would think to look." He glanced at me, a private look, a look that said, "The library, 3rd shelf, inside the cowper." My breath caught. "The letter," Ashworth continued, turning to the room, "confirms the contract. It also confirms that my father entered into the arrangement willingly, with full knowledge of Mr. Whitmore's circumstances, and with the explicit intention that the union would be honoured. It names Miss Whitmore by her full legal name. It describes the ring, and it contains a personal note from my father to me." He paused. The room was silent. "The note says, 'Alexander, I have made many mistakes in governing your life. This was not one of them. She is worth 10 of any woman the season will offer you. I was a coward for not telling you sooner. Do not be a coward now.'" Graves's face went white. "The contract is valid," Ashworth said. "Miss Whitmore's claim is legitimate. And your challenge, cousin, is not only baseless, it is defamatory." He folded the letter and placed it in his breast pocket. "I have instructed my solicitor to pursue every legal remedy available if you persist. I have also written to your creditors. Yes, Lionel, I know about the debts in Brighton, and informed them that your expectation of inheritance is now considerably less certain than you have led them to believe." Graves stood up. His chair scraped against the floor.
You cannot. You would not.
I have. Ashworth's voice was ice and iron, and something beneath both that sounded almost like grief. You came into my house and called a woman who has suffered more than you can imagine an adventuress. You tried to destroy her because she inconveniences your ambition. I am finished tolerating you, Lionel. Get out of my house. The room held its breath. Graves left. He did not bow. He did not look at me. He walked out of the drawing room, out of the entrance hall, out of the front door, and into his curricle. And the sound of the wheels on the gravel was the sound of a man who had bet everything on a single hand and lost. The vicar cleared his throat. The housekeeper ushered the footman away, and then it was just Ashworth and me, alone in the drawing room, with the fire burning low and the echo of his words still ringing off the walls.
You found the key, I said, in the Cooper.
My father knew I loved that book. He knew I would find it eventually. His voice was unsteady for the first time since I had known him. He was a coward and a schemer. And he loved me in the only way he knew how, by trying to give me something I did not know I needed. Alexander, I am not my father. He turned to me. His eyes were bright, not with tears, not quite, but with something dangerously close. I will not arrange your life without your consent. The contract is valid, but I will not enforce it. If you want to leave, take the ring and go. It is yours. It was always yours. And if I do not want to leave? The question fell between us like a stone into deep water. He crossed the room, not fast, not slow, with the deliberate, measured pace of a man who has made a decision and will not unmake it. He stopped in front of me. Close. Closer than propriety allowed. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, the solid reality of him, the way the air between our bodies had turned to something molten and alive. Then stay, he said. Not because of a contract, not because of a ring, because I am asking you, Eleanor, and I have never asked anyone for anything in my life. He took my hand, lifted it. The ring caught the firelight, that dark sapphire, that falcon crest, 7 years of wait and waiting and wondering. And then he did something I had not expected. He did not kiss me. He turned my hand over and pressed his lips to the inside of my wrist, to the pulse point, where my heartbeat was wild and visible and entirely beyond my control, and held them there. 3 seconds. The length of a held breath. The length of a life rearranging itself. Stay, he whispered against my skin. Yes, I said. And then, because the word was not enough, because 7 years of silence and survival and solitary strength deserved more than a single syllable. Yes, Alexander, I will stay. He looked up, and the man I saw, not the Duke, not the title, not the granite reputation or the controlled voice or the white-knuckled hands, was a man who had been alone in a very large house for a very long time, and who had just heard the only word that mattered. He kissed me then. Not my wrist, my mouth, and it was not gentle. It was the release of every unspoken sentence, every held gaze, every moment of standing too close and stepping back. His hand came up to cradle my jaw, and I gripped the lapel of his coat, and the drawing room, with its portraits and its polished furniture and its ruthless propriety, witnessed something it had no protocol for. 2 people who had been brought together by dead men's bargains, choosing each other, alive and real, and refusing to let go. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I should speak to the vicar, he said, before he reaches the village. About what? The corner of his mouth curved. That almost smile I had first seen on the day I arrived. Except now it was a real smile, full and unguarded and devastating. "About reading the banns," he said. We were married 6 weeks later, in the chapel at Ashworth Park, on a morning so bright the stained glass threw coloured light across the stone floor like scattered jewels. I wore my mother's pearls. He wore his father's ring, a different one, a simple gold band he had found in the same strongbox as the letter. Mrs. Harding wept. The butler, whose name was Dawson, and who had become, over the weeks, something almost like a friend, stood at the back of the chapel and permitted himself a single nod of approval. Graves did not attend. We did not expect him to. He had retreated to Brighton, where his creditors were waiting. We heard later that he had sailed for the continent. I felt nothing about this except a vague relief, like the easing of a headache one has carried so long it became indistinguishable from thought. Lady Portmore sent a gift, a set of dessert forks in a velvet-lined box with a card that read, in her elegant, weaponised hand, "With warmest congratulations to the Duke and his surprising Duchess." I used those forks every night for a month, because there is no revenge more satisfying than sincerity, and I was sincerely fond of pudding. But the moment I carry with me, the moment I return to when the house is quiet and Alexander is reading in his study and the ring is warm on my finger, happened the night before the wedding. I could not sleep. I walked down to the library in my dressing gown, and the Cooper was open on the reading table. The volume Alexander's father had hidden the key inside. It was open to a page I had read before, but there, in the margin, in handwriting I recognised as the late Duke's, was a single line, faded to near invisibility. "Let her in, boy. The house is too quiet without her." I closed the book. I pressed my hand against the cover, and I forgave a dead man I had never met, because he had been a coward and a schemer, and he had, against all probability, been right. The house was not quiet anymore.